My friends, the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them he addressed this parable. What man among you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, would not leave the 99 in the desert and go after the lost one until he finds it? And when he does find it, he sets it on his shoulders with great joy, and upon his arrival home, he calls together his friends and neighbors and says to them, "Rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep." I tell you, in just the same way, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who have no need of repentance. Or what woman, having 10 coins and losing one, would not light a lamp and sweep the house, searching carefully until she finds it? And when she does find it, she calls together her friends and neighbors and says to them, "Rejoice with me, because I have found the coin that I lost." In just the same way, I tell you, there will be rejoicing among the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Then he said, "A man had 2 sons, and the younger son said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me.' So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all his belongings and set off to a distant country where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens, who sent him to his farm to tend to his swine. And he longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the swines fed, but no one gave him any. Coming to his senses, he thought, 'How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food to eat, and here I am, dying from hunger? I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers.' So he got up and went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But his father ordered his servants, 'Quickly bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fatted calf and slaughter it. Then let us celebrate with a feast, because the son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.' Then the celebration began. Now the older son had been out in the field, and on the way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what this might mean. The servant said to him, 'Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf, because he has him back safe and sound.' He became angry, and when he refused to enter the house, his father came out and pleaded with him. He said to his father in reply, 'Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, who swallowed up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughter the fattened calf.' he said to him, "My son, you are here with me always. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found." The Gospel of the Lord. This evening, the scriptures are all very similar. And by that I mean that they stress the gift of the forgiveness and the mercy of our God. The mercy and forgiveness given to you and me, and what we must do with it. Because we in turn must become forgiveness for one another. The Gospel of St. Luke today brings to us the three great miracles, the parables of Christ, moving stories about forgiveness. St. Paul today chooses the same theme in his letter to Timothy because he says he himself has experienced God's mercy, and no one should doubt that Jesus came into the world to save and to forgive the sinners. And then the Exodus story of the golden calf in the wilderness, that too also ends on a note of forgiveness and the love of our God. And so all of these scriptures invite us tonight to ponder the true meaning of sin and forgiveness in all of our lives. We have to think and reflect and pray. Can we believe in the amazing mercy God has for you and for me? Can we forgive ourselves? Are we able to forgive others, our brothers and sisters, our neighbors and friends? And are we able to rejoice when we experience God's love and mercy for each of us? The gospel message on forgiveness this evening will make a difference in all of our lives only if we recognize ourselves in the various characters of the gospel this night in Jesus' parable. Because Jesus' stories tonight are not so much about people who we can hear about, sit back and reflect on, or observe at a safe distance. No, his stories, his parables, particularly this evening, they're really about you and me, because they challenge all of us to participate our very selves in each of them. They call us to be the prodigal son, the brother, the father. They call us to mercy and forgiveness. Think about it. You and I, we are the prodigal son. Because too often we frequently turn our back on love and run after other gods. Sometimes we become self-centered. We think we know it all. We search for happiness in the wrong places, in security, in pleasure, in power and popularity, only then to find ourselves empty and wasted when there is nothing there, when it really fails to deliver the promise that we expected. And so we wander and we squander and we waste our gifts. We feel afraid and lost and dead inside as we face our sinfulness and our weaknesses. We find it hard to forgive ourselves, our failures, our limitations, our wrong judgments on our actions. And like the prodigal son, we are imperfect. We are in process. We need to grow by trial and error. And just like that prodigal son, we too struggle to believe in the love that embraces our far from perfect self, a mercy that welcomes us back with no questions asked, a mercy that offers us gifts beyond what we deserve or have earned, and a love that produces and creates life without death. And as the prodigal son, we are just like the lost sheep of Jesus' other parable. Because a sheep cut off from the herd becomes totally disoriented. It's paralyzed by fear that it cannot walk. And its only hope for survival is the love that comes from the good shepherd, who must seek it out if it is to be saved and found. And as the lost sheep, you and I, we have known isolation. We have known depression. We have known fear. And thus we need to be called, invited, sought out in order to be saved and loved by our God and one another. That's Jesus' message of forgiveness. That's truly the good news for each and every one of us. And so we are also the forgiving Father in Jesus' parable. Because we are often asked to forgive others and to welcome them back into our lives. We must not meet these people with a reminder of the hurt or the fault or the failure. We cannot hold on to unforgiveness and ponder the hurt. If we are going to be the Father in the gospel, we must run to embrace them and offer a forgiveness that is full, complete, and free. And as the Father in the parable, we must learn that God's forgiveness is the model, the starting point for the gift of forgiveness for ourselves and one another. Because it's in sharing forgiveness that we share God's forgiveness. Is that possible within us? And finally, you and I, we are the elder brother. We find it difficult at times to be as merciful to others as God is with us. We may resent seeing a reformed individual welcomed into our community, or maybe a brother or a sister forgiven by a parent for a wrong, or maybe a person in crisis who's treated with love and respect, or maybe someone who was in prison and is offered a job in our place of work. It's easy for us to forget that we too are greatly in God's debt and in need of forgiveness and love. The gospel asks all of us tonight to recognize the link between our forgiveness of others and God's forgiveness of you and me. Because Jesus asks us to find joy in reconciliation and forgiveness, to rejoice as he does, more over the return of one sinner than over the 99 just. And so we have heard them proclaim tonight. The woman with the lost coin who invited her neighbors to celebrate. The father of the prodigal son who welcomed him back and he celebrated. And the shepherd of the lost sheep, he went in haste, he found, and he rejoiced. All of these parables remind us that each of us are called to open the door of faith to someone through our words, our actions, each and every day, and to celebrate and to share with them God's love, God's mercy, and God's forgiveness together. May our prayer this night and every day truly be a prayer of mercy and forgiveness. May it extend to all those around us as we celebrate the love, the mercy, the compassion, and kindness of Christ with each other. Because if God forgives us, hopefully we can forgive each other.